I now recognize Representative Burlison from Missouri.
Thank you. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. And thank you, Madam Chair, for your support of transparency. And really, I want to thank our president for his efforts to be the disclosure president. As many of you know, and the reason why we're here, under his executive order, we've had over 240,000 classified documents released. These documents pull back the curtain on the surveillance that was heavy-handed and towards, and before, leading up to Dr. King's assassination in 1968. And we're talking about wiretaps, we're talking about bugging hotel rooms, in trying to get informants within his circle, all run by his own government that's there supposed to be protecting his rights. Look, at the end of the day, I think they went, what's interesting is the impact maybe still goes on today. And so I was going to ask the witnesses first and foremost, Mr. Wexler, do you see similarities to what happened at the time that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated and the surveillance, the heavy hand of the surveillance state? Do you see similarities to what we are facing today?
So a lot of what I'm here for particularly is about Dr. King's assassination. And a lot of those 250,000 files, I've been through them. Almost none of them actually deal with the surveillance on Dr. King. I'm well aware of what the surveillance was on Dr. King. I'm hoping that we could talk about what can be done to release even more information on his assassination if Congress unseals the records from the House Select Committee on Assassinations. To your question, Representative Burlison, it's a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but there's no question that technology now has made it infinitely easier, not just for the government, but for private companies to surveil people. And so that is something that definitely concerns me. Part of what I'm trying to do here is to suggest a way forward on the assassination files where we can release the material on King's assassination that the executive order focuses on, the assassination, release that material from the House's investigation in the 1970s without reflexively releasing information that, again, and I hope I can answer some questions about this, is not even true about Dr. King. Like that's my big concern is that there's the process of the surveillance, which is a terrible thing that happened.
But it all seemed to be trying to point in a direction that really was not the reality, that he was somehow, connected to, or he was a communist in some way or a socialist. And it was all trying to pin that on him. But when you look at the documents that have been released, they seem to indicate that he never had any of those comments or thoughts.
Well, I mean, again, the documents are almost entirely, the 250,000 that were released were exactly what President Trump put forward in the executive order, which is almost exclusively about the crime, like who was where, when, what witnesses saw what, what did the analysis of the bullets say. There's a small subset that deals with the surveillance, it's Operation Merrimack, of some of the civil rights and anti-war activities, which people forget Dr. King was associated with. But it's not the salacious stuff. We know about the salacious stuff from other previous sources, and it's partially why I'm worried, because I agree with you, Representative Burlison. A lot of the salacious stuff, we would have no way of ever even verifying if it's true, because unfortunately a lot of the figures who would be around to even talk about it don't even exist. It was obtained illegally. It was obtained for the very purpose of smearing not just him, but people like you folks in Congress, people in the executive branch, presidents of the United States. And a lot of it was about trying to create a perception of people, like you said, that was either completely untrue or at least a distortion of the truth. J. Edgar Hoover was not discerning. I would agree with you on that.
Just looking at this, and I've read some of your testimony that you're kind of trying to draw a line here that there is a way to legitimately release these documents without harming, without violating the interest of or releasing material that might be harmful to the King family.
100% there is.
And can you explain that, what that is?
So the material that I'm most interested, there's some other stuff I can talk about. The stuff that I'm most interested is the stuff that you folks are the ones who are the only people who can release. President Trump can't release it. Courts can't release it because it's sealed by the Congress. In the late 1970s, there was a concurrent investigation of both the assassination of JFK and MLK. We have almost all of the JFK files from that investigation. We have basically zero from the MLK assassination. There's a misperception that there's this absolute seal on the material, but there was a letter that went with the seal. And that letter that went with the seal gave the clerk, at any given time, the clerk of the House of Representatives, the discretion to release files. Now, I believe the clerk should direct the archives, the Legislative Archive Center in DC, it's not the one at Narratu, to release the material, but selectively. And I talked with the liaison, Danny Coulson, he's a fairly legendary figure in FBI circles, who was the liaison between the House Select Committee of Assassinations and the Justice Department. And he concurred with my assessment, which is that's a very easy thing to do, to release just the material that they got from witnesses to the crime, from suspects and who were interviewed, and take out the stuff that was likely, frankly, I believe, probably sent for the very purpose of keeping that committee from fully investigating, which is the smear stuff on Dr. King. Those are almost exclusively located within files under the FBI classification code with 100 and 105 under Section E of the final report. You just say to the Legislative Archive, expedite the release of all of the material on the assassination, the staff interviews, staff reports, executive session testimony from people who actually have information on the assassination. But let's not, we could take our time, we could do a much more deliberative process, however long it takes, with these 100 and 105 files, and make sure we're not putting out, doing, again, J. Edgar Hoover's dirty work for him. There's a way to do that.